Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So, Lauren Steiner, that woman is a pit bull. I've said it before, I will say it again, that woman is a pit bull. I came across her when she was having a conversation with Cenk Uygur, and she asked him some tough but fair questions revolving, well, there's a few questions, but the specific one that I covered was a conversation she had about the $20 million that TYT received from Katzenberg, a Democratic donor, a Democratic contributor, as an investment into the company itself. Now, her question boiled down to, you guys received $20 million. Are you telling me that the $20 million you received in no way impacts the coverage that you guys give to the various, whatever you guys are covering? I think this is somewhat of a fair question, because understand, she's asking him a question based on his own ideology. For that matter, based on Dore's ideology and based on my own ideology. We believe that these people are bought. We believe that they lean a particular way because of the cash that is being stuffed into their G-string. We believe that they parrot particular perspectives, even when those perspectives are against the public interest, based upon who's paying them. You have dollars or you have pitchforks. And for all intents and purposes, for the past 20, 30 years, you've only had dollars. They lean to their investors, or in this case, lean to the people who are giving them cash. In this case, investors, I mean the people who are giving them political bribes. Now, TYT has made this point. I agree with TYT on this point. I think they're absolutely right on this point. So her question becomes somewhat intuitive for people who actually believe that they're right, particularly when you're talking about the left. If you're saying that politicians are getting a lot of money, if you're saying that media, for all intents and purposes, receives a lot of money also from this political quagmire of sorts, and their coverage, their perspective, the things that they say and the positions that they take is influenced by either the money that they're receiving, the money that they're terrified is going to be used against them, or the incentive of being able to go into this kind of revolving door once you get out of government. If we're saying that the incentives that are built into it are a form of bribery of sorts, why does that stop at the water's edge? Meaning, why does that also stop at you? If I agree with you that this world is this way, that these people are bribed, that the incentives go towards them behaving a particular way in order to maintain the cash that they're receiving, why does that not apply to you? That's her basic point. That's the basic question that she asked Cenk Uygur, and Cenk Uygur answered that question. She's asking the same question of Dore. Now, she's clearly a fan of Dore. That in no way stops her from asking him difficult questions, especially around the Russia hacking nonsense and especially around this particular question. Because clearly it's something that bothers her and it's something she's mentioned before. So having somebody who she actually, I guess, vibes a little bit better with and seeing his perspective of it, it's fucking interesting. That's why I'm kind of displaying it. I think it's a fucking interesting question. And I like that Dore is open with answering this question. So let's take a look at her. Lauren Steiner asking, does receiving $20 million from a Democratic contributor in any way affect the content or the tenor of the coverage that TYT provides? That's her basic question. If you're saying that it affects people, meaning in the political sphere, why does it not affect you? Let's hear her ask the question, and let's hear Dore's answer, and we can talk about it after. And by the way, any network, understand TYT is a media pursuit. It's a financial pursuit. Cenk Uygur is a capitalist. I don't necessarily think he pushed back against that. I think he considered himself a capitalist. He's in a business. Any business who wants to grow and wants to maximize their profit is going to find ways that they can grow and expand their reach. It is not insane to say we need to take an investment in order to expand that reach. It is also not insane for somebody to ask the question, does that advancement, or does that money, does the advancement of cash change the coverage? Does it alter the coverage? Does it tweak the coverage? Does it push your coverage into the direction that's a little bit more aligned with the Democratic Party? The question's fair. So we can be very clear, though. I'm not saying that that's what's taking place. I'm not even insinuating that's what's taking place. I'm making the point that that's the question that she's answering, that she's asking. That's the question that Jimmy Dore is going to answer. That's the question that's been brought up multiple times before. Let's hear Jimmy Dore's answer. Let's talk about it shortly after.
actually, I was wondering about Cenk because, I saw Cenk at the E-Board meeting, and I asked him some tough questions about how he's taking money from Jeffrey Katzenberg. He got a $20 million investment to hire some journalists, and so far I haven't seen a lot of them, doing the original investigative reporting that they're supposed to be doing. I see a lot of punditry, and unfortunately on the main show, it tends to be kind of mainstream. And I made the point that if he's taking money from Jeffrey Katzenberg, who's a big donor to the Democratic Party, how is that not affecting the kind of candidates that, well, he was with Justice Democrats at the time, but, I gave him the analogy, Jeff Bezos, okay, he runs the Washington Post, which is the organ for the deep state, and he also runs Amazon, which took a $600 million contract for the CIA. So I was...
And Jeff Bezos sits on a Pentagon board.
Oh, he does?
Yes, he's also on a board. Yes, that's true.
So I was just questioning Cenk, about how he, does he think that this money that he's taken from the establishment Democratic Party would influence him? And of course, he says it hasn't, but now we see, this reporting about Russia. So I know that you may not you have to choose your words very carefully, but...
No, I don't, I don't think that's, I don't think Cenk is preaching a false narrative for investment money. I think he truly believes it. I take, Cenk is what I call a natural Republican, right? So he was a Republican at first for a long time, and he talks about this openly, about how he even led pro-Iraq war rallies, right? The first one. And so that's why people are drawn to him, because it's this great journey where he went from this, meathead into this progressive, right? And so that's what appealed to me about his journey and about Cenk, is that he started off there and he ended up here. So it often comes up, right, that his, what I will call, his reflexes might often be a little bit establishment, but that's why I'm there to help, right? So, like, for instance, one of my biggest pieces of personal pride of being on the Young Turks was Cenk and I discussed the death penalty one time on the air, and he was pro death penalty, and I talked to him, and by the end of the segment, he changed. And he said that, I gave him all the arguments, and at the end, he said, you made me a little more progressive today. So I think, if he is what we consider to be wrong on an issue, it's just because he's genuinely believes it. That money, that investment money, that's not how Cenk works. And if he's making a mistake, it's just he's making a mistake. Or I disagree with him. I disagree with him before they took that money. Well, the first gas attack in 2013, and Barack Obama wanted to bomb Syria over that, and they believed it.
And it was proven false.
It was since proven false, right? So my whole thing is I try to tell them, you have to start, my jumping off point is the government is lying. That's where you start, and now you just figure out what they're lying about. Right. And so I never, especially foreign policy, especially that, it was obviously a false flag. And so the second time the gas attack happened, when they tried to say it was Assad doing it, Cenk actually sniffed it out. And he said, this doesn't make any sense. Right. And he said, why would he be doing this if he's winning the war? So I just think so. As far as the money influencing his news coverage, I don't think that's happening. If you dislike his news coverage, which I disagree with the Russiagate narrative and I'm trying to influence them. Kyle Kulinski also is trying to influence them. And what I'm trying to impress upon them is that you're going to be hoisted on your own petard, right? If you push Russiagate, it's just, they always use this to silence the left. Always use this to silence the left. They're already doing it they're doing it to Jeremy Corbyn in the UK, saying he was given secrets. He's a traitor with the communists. And of course, in the UK, they're a little sharper than we are over here. So when they do that shit to him, it just makes Jeremy Corbyn stronger, right? And we're not there yet. And I think it's because when they do it to Bernie, he fucking goes along with it, right? With the Russiagate. And so, and they still smear him.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that.
I find that answer to be amazing. So, first of all, he seems like he's being earnest. Like, it doesn't necessarily seem like he's trying to hedge his answer. Whatever you want to think of what Jimmy Dore is saying here, meaning whether you agree with him or disagree with him, he seems to believe that, yes, this money is not necessarily influencing him in the way that you're insinuating. If he's just wrong about something, he's just wrong. He's not corrupt. That is kind of funny. He's not corrupt. He's just wrong. That's awesome. I find this question to be interesting only because this question keeps coming up when people are talking about their coverage. Look, I used to watch TYT during the Sanders thing. It does seem like their coverage has changed. Now, whether that's because there's $20 million that's been put in their pockets, it does seem as if TYT sheepdogs people into the Democratic Party, or at the very least, it seems that that's their goal. At one point, they were affiliated with Justice Democrats who have Democrats at the very end of their name. So understand what she's saying. What she's saying is not necessarily insane. What she's saying is not crazy in the least. She's asking somewhat of a basic question based on their own understanding and their own view of the world that they themselves espouse. People get a lot of money. Those people bend towards the people who are giving them the cash. They either want to retain that cash or they don't necessarily want that cash used against them, in which case they lean in the direction of the people who give them the cash. Cash buys influence. So her question is not insane. I don't necessarily think people asking this question is necessarily insane. But just because they're asking a question, it doesn't necessarily mean that they've changed their coverage in order to coincide with the $20 million that they received from the donor. So if nothing else, it seems like he's being earnest when he's answering the question in this way. So I'm going to have to reach out to her. She's awesome. I love the way she asks questions. I mean, like I said, she's not overly aggressive, but she definitely gets across, I have a particular question. I'm going to ask you this question. Not overly aggressive, not boisterous, but definitely putting difficult questions for you to answer. And to Jimmy Dore's credit, he didn't hedge. He answered. The funny part about it, Jimmy Dore is like, wait a minute. Is she insinuating that he's corrupt? Like, that seems as if for the moment she caught him off guard. And even that makes it seem like he's being more earnest than it. Like, what? Why is she thinking this? Why is she thinking this? He's close to Cenk on this. So you can understand where in his mind, he's like, I don't see what people are seeing on this. He's closer to him. Now, she's looking at it like, why on earth would anybody push this Russian narrative when that Russian narrative is going to hurt us? And Dore, in his answer, somewhat alluded to it himself, meaning they're using this in order to hit lefty movements. Yes, they're hitting the left. I mean, they're hitting right on some of this. But they've also clarified or delineated Russian bots as being the reason for everything from environmentalists to Black Lives Matter to Bernie Sanders supporters who were pissed off that they were cheated by the DNC. They've even used this in this kind of weird amalgam of an explanation to explain or to allude or to insinuate that Hillary Clinton lost because she was running against Russia and running against Donald Trump. Bernie Sanders aided and assisted on that one. The point in this video is to allow people to hear Dore answer this very specific question, seeing as this is one of the questions that seems to continuously come up. So I'll end it at that. Like I said, I don't necessarily take a position on whether or not this affects their coverage one way or the other. I think the question itself is fair. I mean, you've fused a media company into a political apparatus. You called yourself, in many respects, Justice Democrats, and I understand that those things were separate. One is, Justice Democrats, in which case he was on the board. The other one being TYT itself. The investment itself was for TYT. The investment wasn't necessarily for Justice Democrats. I think the question people ask, though, is, well, certainly those things were affiliated with one another, though. You were on both. Is it possible that you being on board with both, you working in favor of Democrats, I mean, after all, you have Democrats at the end of the name, does that push you in a particular direction? It's not an insane question. It's not an insane question. And she's asked this of Cenk, and now she's asked this of Dore. So at this point, you can hear both of their answers, and you can come to your own conclusions. I'll leave it at that. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, everyone.